Kingdom. Today we have another episode with Mary, and in this discussion, we're talking about domestic violence in the Black community. But before we get started, I want to introduce my guest, Mary, and want her to tell us a little bit about herself.
Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Mary Patterson. I am the founder of Don't Block Your Bloom Wellness Center and Life Coaching Center for Women here in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm also a certified spiritual life coach and an author, and I've dedicated my work to helping women overcome their past traumas.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak with my audience. Um, what is your thoughts on domestic violence as a topic?
Um, well, my actual thoughts on domestic violence is I have a few thoughts actually. Um, Sometimes I'll start as a child. A lot of times, some people who have mirrored the behavior of domestic violence have grew up in a home where they were around domestic violence, so it's a learned behavior. And as maybe as a teenager and as an adult, it's a behavior that is fueled by fear. It can be fueled by fear. It can be fueled by unhealed traumas as a teen or an adult. I feel like domestic violence is not talked about enough. I actually think that it should be programs in schools around this particular topic because I think the percentage is really high um, in regards to domestic violence in high schools. I myself have seen, you know, young boys beating on young girls and young girls beating on young men. And I also think at some points it's just a lack of respect for self and one another.
What is your personal experience with the topic?
Well, I have had experience with domestic violence as a young adult. I was 25. I got with a guy. He was maybe like 5 years older than me, so he was probably around 30 at the time. And he first it started off as verbal abuse, and then it started as a smack across the face, and then it just fueled to um, actual fights, you know. But the verbal abuse was um, a lot of it. It was not always physical abuse, and sometimes the verbal abuse isn't considered domestic violence, but it is. Because those things are embedded in your head. You know, if someone's calling you ugly and calling you names over and over again and cursing you all the time, these things cause mental stress, you know. So that was my experience with domestic violence as a young adult.
Um, how did the experience of having domestic violence take place in your life affect you physically?
Um, well, it's crazy because I didn't, well, I won't say I didn't realize. There were phases and there were levels to my acknowledgement of the effect that it had on me. Of course, I knew that it had affected me some way. There were there it caused triggers, you know, with me. Like I didn't understand when I was actually being loved properly, because to me, if someone wasn't trying to control me, I didn't feel that they loved me, because you didn't want to know my every move. You were not checking on me every 5 minutes. Pretty much, if you weren't didn't display like narcissist behaviors, I didn't think that you really cared about me. So that's one way that it affected me, because my now husband when we started dating, he was just like this gentle guy, and I just didn't understand, like, why was he so soft? And it wasn't that he was soft, he just knew how to treat me as a woman and a person. And it wasn't the yelling, and it wasn't the rough housing me, and it wasn't the control. So that was one of the things. And then, some of the triggers I developed, um, you know, from domestic violence. I had a lot of healing to do, and I didn't realize how much of that healing I had to do until I got married and was in a healthy relationship. And I was the dysfunctional one in the relationship because I was so used to dysfunction. Then, I was trying to bring that into a relationship that wasn't dysfunctional. And I had to learn to allow myself to be loved properly. And that was a whole journey for me. And it actually took me sitting myself down and going into those dark spaces within myself to heal from what I thought I had already healed from. And that's me replaying the mental, replaying the scenes in my head of what happened when I was in the domestic violence relationship, and me thinking that every man is just like that, or me thinking that if a man isn't doing this, then he doesn't love me. So I had to learn to love myself first so I can actually know when I'm being loved properly.
And would you say that also affected you mentally?
Oh yeah, it did, because depression was with that. I ended up losing a child, having a stillborn baby. I carried her for 9 months while I was in that domestic situation. I carried this baby for 9 months, but the abuse continued. So, stress and stuff, when you're carrying a child, you don't need those things. You need to try to be as healthy as possible, mentally, physically, but the stress from that relationship was way too much during my pregnancy. So to have that on top of actually being in that relationship, yes, it definitely affected me mentally. And I was depressed for a while. I had to pull myself up out of this valley moment in this dark space mentally, because I was out of the relationship, but I was still mentally living there. So that's how it was definitely affecting me mentally.
Did you grow up witnessing domestic violence growing up? And how do you think it affected your upbringing and romantically?
I didn't have, like, my parents, it was no physical abuse. I think it was the normal disagreement that any relationship has. So I can't say that I grew up around in an abusive home in any way.
Okay. Would you say that children who witness domestic violence taking place in the home or just in their small community affects them?
I definitely do. Like I said earlier, it's also sometimes a learned behavior. A child absorbs the environment that they're in, and then as a teenager, young adult, and adult, they have to unlearn these things, because they then learn as an adult that it no longer serves them in where they're going in life. And sometimes they may never unlearn these behaviors. So as a child that's in these type of environments, you ultimately become a product of your environment. So some of these behaviors, okay, if daddy treated mom this way, or if mom treated daddy that way, then I guess this is how it's supposed to be. I have 3 children, and my husband and I are very intentional about not trying not to have, like, heated disagreements in front of the children. And even if we have disagreements in front of the children, it's not us yelling at one another. It's not us cursing at one another, but actually having a conversation that it may end, okay, we have to agree to disagree. And then if those conversations do happen in front of the children, we teach them that it's a way that you can communicate. without raising your voice. It's a way that you communicate your emotions and your feelings without putting your hands on someone and without degrading someone's character, their trying to break their spirit or whatever it is. And you know, you have some children who are in homes like that, and those are the attributes that they would then absorb as a child. So yes, it's children who are in abusive homes. It definitely affects them.
Um, how would you? I mean, do you think? What's the chances of like children actually imitating, like starting to imitate? Like you can see the signs of children like imitating what they see if they are in like those kind of situations. Can you like see the early signs of them going on the wrong path?
Um, I can say I have. Um, just being around my children's friends and children in the neighborhoods or interacting with children, you can kind of sometimes tell the environment that a child is being surrounded in or brought up in. Not in all cases, because a lot of times, your child is only with you a certain amount of time of the day. A lot of times they're in school. Well, COVID's going on. Some people are still homeschooling, but your child is in school most of the time, and you can't control what they pick up at in school. So the signs, I say the signs are always there. They're always there. And you have some children who may be in these environments and are just as gentle, as they come, and they don't absorb what's around them. So sometimes you have that type of child, and sometimes you don't. You have the child who imitates and becomes a reflection of their environment.
Did you have any children during that time or?
Yes. So, well, I got pregnant and with my second child with this person, and I end up leaving him after the child was born. So my child was not actually in the abusive he was in the abusive relationship in the womb, right? But once he was born, we weren't physically, in the relationship anymore. We decided to go our separate ways. And, I had to do that for my child because I did not want him picking up those behaviors or in that toxic environment.
So now that you do have children, have you like talked to them about your experience? I know you talk about like trying to treat others kindly and stuff, but have you actually told them about your experience with domestic violence?
Yeah, so I have not like sat them down and told them like all the details of it. I want to, once I feel that they are old enough to not internalize it per se. But my son does know that mommy was in an abusive relationship and mommy had to get out of that relationship because it was not healthy. In regards to the details of the abuse, no, my children do not know that. And, of course, I have the book called Don't Block Your Bloom, and it's in the book. And so my kids are always asking, Mommy, can I read your book? Can I read your book? And I'm like, no, not yet. So, yeah. No, to answer your question directly, no, they don't know the extent of the abuse.
But you plan on to in the future when they are mature enough to like handle that kind of information.
Yes, exactly.
Understand that.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have all my questions and then and I'll make sure we finish on time.
Okay, that's fine.
So how was you able to get out of that kind of situation and like recover from it?
Well, I always say the way I got out was I had to make it about my child and not me. So once I had my child, I felt like I had to save him more than I had to save myself. So I say that he saved my life, and that's how I got out of the situation because he deserved more. And in turn, I realized I deserve more as well. Um, so that's how I got out of the situation. What was the second half of your question?
Um, no, I think you answered it.
Oh, okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure.
No, you answered it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I had to save my child.
So what inspired you or made you want to become an advocate for like other victims of domestic violence?
Because I knew that my silence wasn't going to help anyone. I knew that I had to speak my truth because I knew my story had the power to help and heal other people. Um, I also felt that women need support after the relationship because getting out of the relationship is just the beginning of your journey. It's still a whole healing process after that. Um, and some women have like PTSD after that, so how do you handle that? How do you get back to a mental state where you can live with yourself? How do you get back to where your mind a place of peace for you, and not a place of chaos and turmoil? So it was important to me that one, I told my story, and secondly, I offer women the support after the fact within my Don't Block Your Bloom community, where I say I coach women out of bondage. And it's not me offering women the answers. It's me coaching them to the spaces within themselves where the answers lie, and asking the right questions to get them thinking. So, yes, that's it right there.
So how do you feel domestic violence affects people of color?
um, us as a community, one, I don't think is talked about enough. Um, I I think because domestic violence it stems from several places, I've learned. And now being out of the relationship, um, I can see that us as a community, our Black men, sometimes have mommy issues. We always talk about the women having daddy issues, but what about the men who have mommy issues and have yet to heal those spaces within themselves? So the man that I was with, now that I'm out of the relationship, he had mommy issues, and he could not love a woman until he forgiven his mom, until he healed from whatever trauma he dealt with his mother. So, the mother is the first connection any child has, but a male, that is the first woman in his life. That is the first woman he loves. That's the first woman he lays eyes on. So in our community, we don't talk about the men who have mommy issues. And then we don't talk about women who are also abusing the men. It's not just the men abusing the women, and this is physically, verbally, mentally. It's not just someone putting their hands on you, but women not knowing how to speak to our men and men not knowing how to speak to our women. And as a community, I feel like there's a lot of healing that needs to take place as a community.
In what ways do you think a conversation on this topic can actually like be brought up within the community to like start talking about these problems that before we can fix it, or how we can possibly change the environment within our community on this topic?
I'm always saying, let's go to the schools, right? Because our children are there. It starts there. And like I said before, these are topics that should happen in our schools, like our middle schools, our high schools, because we already have our children and our presence there, you know. So why can't we talk about healing, or why can't we talk about the voice that these young children have at this age, you know? Why can't we discuss some of the things that they may see at home and actually show them in the schools a different way, you know? So I think the conversation needs to start there. I think you're starting the conversation for sure, you know? So platforms like yours, you know, just keep at it, keep pushing the narrative to start talking about this thing and not just sweeping it under the rug.
What are the challenges do you think like many victims face when it comes to like removing themselves from that situation? Like they physically remove themselves from the situation, but then there's challenges they have to face. What's some of those kind of challenges do victims usually face after having that kind of experience?
Actually, I think the challenges definitely start way before leaving, because you have some people who are in an abusive relationship because you have an abuser who, you know, it's not always bad, right? It's good and bad, then good, then bad. So it's like, I'm gonna give you some hope to stay, and then you trigger me or do something I don't like, and then I'm back at bad, but I'm gonna give you some more hope to stay. So it causes like a psychological confusion per se, where like, I think I'm in a good relationship, but I'm not, because every now and again he's spazzing out or she's spazzing out and hitting me or calling me out of my names. So, you know, that's one thing you challenge you may face, because you don't know, you're confused, right? So, and then you have some women who may stay in a relationship because they have nowhere else to go. You know, so this relationship is all they have. And then you have some women who get out of a relationship, but they have yet to deal with the effects of the relationship, and they're sabotaging everything else that could be good for them. And just dealing with the psychological and the PTSD that comes with it are some of the challenges that that people are faced with after it.
Do domestic take place amongst other situations besides like between romantic partners?
Oh yeah, for sure. I say it can happen in any relationship, any ship that you have with someone else, friendships, business relationships. I have experience like of abuse, verbal abuse in business relationships. You know, at work, people have abuse at work. So it's not just romantic relationships where people are experiencing this abuse. But yes, it can happen in any relationship. Any relationship that you feel that you're not being treated as you deserve to be treated, or you're not being treated at the level that you feel that you should be treated, then I say it's time for you to let it go. That's any relationship.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to point that out, because a lot of people, when they hear domestic violence, they always think about a romantic situation, but they don't think about, that toxic work environment that that toxic teacher that always call you out and say negative things to you in front
Mm-hmm.
of the classroom.
Yeah,
So I'm glad you brought that up. So
that's very
you know
true.
that there's more ways that domestic takes place besides physical, and not just with in romantic relationships, but it could be your own parents, it can be your teacher, your boss at a job.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I saw on your Instagram on Don't Block Your Bloom organization. Can you tell me more about your organization? What you do for like to help victims to overcome?
Sure. So well, Don't Block Your Bloom. It started off as a book. Um, and it was a book that was birthed out of obedience, and it tells my story with domestic violence and how I overcame it, and how my healing process per se. You know, people say it's definitely a guide. And, you know, I'm like looking at it and I'm like, wow, it it could be a guide on how to overcome your domestic violence or reaching your full potential. So it started there as a book, and then I transitioned into becoming a certified spiritual life coach. So I can gain the knowledge in the toolbox to actually help women through the process of healing from their past traumas, whether it be domestic violence or, you know, whatever it is. You know, trauma happens in many ways. So it can be big trauma, small trauma. So right now, Don't Block Your Bloom is a life coaching and wellness center for women. We have a community, the She's in Bloom community, and it's just a group of women who comes together once a month who's committed to their bloom, becoming the best version of themselves. And as you know, you never stop growing. You know, you're always blooming, as I say. You're always growing. So as you overcome and heal one part of yourself, you may find out that you have another trigger, but that doesn't mean that you're no longer healed. You just have something else that's brought to the light that you have to attend to. So it's just showing yourself that grace and continue your bloom. So that's what it's about. It's about us coming together as women and supporting one another on the journey to bloom. So that's Don't Block Your Bloom. And you can find me all over the internet at Don't Block Your Bloom.
Yeah, you'll Aphro Kingdom. You'll definitely get this information to connect with her through going to the description box where you'll find her information, and you can actually find her on social media on her website, and you can actually sign up to meet up with her as well.
Yes.
So, what is your future plans going forward with your organization? How did you come up with the name? Very
Um,
unique.
it's funny. Well, the name came to me. I didn't come up with the name. The name came to me through prayer and meditation. That's why I say it was very purposeful, because it's not something that um, I came up with. You know, it's something that came to me and I received it, right? Um, if you know anything about my platform, it is spirit based. So I am very big on manifestation. I'm very big on listening to your intuition. I'm very big on you feeling what you need to feel and knowing what it is that you feel. Um, so the name Don't Block Your Bloom came to me, and I didn't choose it, it chose me. And it definitely grew into something that I had no clue it would be. But once the name came to me and I was able to meditate on it and pray about it, the meaning behind the name is a lot of times we are in our own way of blooming. It's us who's stopping our bloom, whether it be mentally, whether it be spiritually, whether it be physically. It's us against us. It's you against you. No one else can stop you from becoming all that you need to be. No one else can stop you from becoming what God has already put out there for you to be, but you. So a lot of times in the book, I go through some of those things that could possibly be stopping you from your bloom, or some of those things that's blocking your bloom that you have to deal with, like not taking things personally, knowing when someone else is projecting their trauma or insecurities onto you, which could translate from into domestic violence. That person you're experiencing the domestic abuse from could very well be projecting their anger and their trauma onto you through speaking to you a certain way, or through putting their hands on you, because that's the only way they know how to communicate whatever it is that they're going through. But you have to know, like, no, it's not something that I've done. This is this person's trauma that they need to deal with, and I deserve more, and I have to go this way. So I'm not blocking my bloom, you know? So, yes.
So, what advice do you have for like victims who possibly are going to look at this episode, who's trying to figure out what's the first step for them?
Yes. So, I would say a support system. A support system is key, because a lot of time when people are in these relationships, they feel alone because they feel embarrassed. You can't just tell someone that I'm in an abusive relationship, because the first thing they're going to say is, why don't you leave? And a lot of times it's not that easy to, okay, let me just pack up and leave. So, surround yourself with people that you can talk to. And some of it may not be your friends or your family, it may be an organization. I know the House of Ruth has a very good program. It's a nonprofit in the Washington, D.C. area who helps victims. So, they're safe houses. Try to if it's not someone that will encourage you to leave, at least have someone that you can go to, because honestly, a lot of women, they don't leave the abusive relationships, and some of them, the percentage of women making it out of these relationships is very low. So I say community will be the first step. Reach out to community. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to the House of Ruth. You can try to find hotlines and Google safe houses. So I say community is very important.
That's great advice, especially since the pandemic. We have heard on the news a lot of people, especially women of color, who has been in domestic violence, and because we were stuck at home, they didn't have the escape to go to work or to talk to their friends, but they were stuck with the abuser. So yeah. I think it's probably an important topic to have, especially since it's a current event and something that's actually happening at this very moment as we're still in COVID times, even though we're going back to normal times.
Yeah. Even some of the children were stuck at home with their abusers, so yeah. I say if you can get yourself around a community who can support you on the journey of you gathering yourself to exit the relationship, and can provide you with the resources so that you are safe to exit the relationship, please do so.
What are the chances that victims, like, as they get out of one situation, one domestic violence situation, end up finding themselves in another one, in a repeated cycle?
Yeah. I don't know the actual statistics on that. However, I do know about generational cycles. I do know about cycles and how it's so easy to end up back in a domestic violence relationship, because that was once me. And like I said, it cycles to these relationships where, the relationship may not just start off as abusive. You may be with the sweetest woman or the sweetest man or whatever, and then all of a sudden something triggers this person, and the abuse may start there, but now you may feel like you're too invested to leave. Or you may find out, oh, he or she's just having a bad day, or so the cycle is very real. It's not until you are able to always put yourself first in what you deserve, no matter what, and you aren't in a place where you are accepting the excuses that you make for other people's behaviors. So it doesn't matter what triggers you have. It does not give you the right to abuse me in any way. And that's me knowing what I deserve. So therefore, I'm not going to tolerate your behavior because I know this is not what I deserve. So the chances of someone getting out of a relationship and then falling back into a domestic violence relationship, it very well can happen. And also, from experience, I had to find out what in me was that abusive relationship. What was it feeding in me? Because there was some toxic behavior in me that relationship was feeding as well. Why did this behavior translate into love and translate into someone caring? And those were things in me that I had to do, that was working me, that I had to figure out, like, why? Oh, how is this translating that someone cares about me if they want to control me, or if they're calling me out of my name every day? So what in me is that feeding? That it's fueling me to stay. So if you're finding yourself back in domestic violence relationship, what is it feeding within you? How are you falling back into these spaces? Those are just a few questions to ask yourself at some point, because a lot of times you have to go inward. You have to go inward.
So would you say someone who just came out of a domestic violence, but they start to enter a new relationship, would you suggest counseling for to understand what was the triggers in that relationship so it don't pass on to a new relationship? Or when you get to a new person who's healthier, but you don't see them as actually caring about you because you've been so used to the domestic trauma, as you find that you messed it up for yourself, you feel like counseling before trying to enter a new relationship is best, or to work within the relationship in the partnership?
Yeah, so I would say anyone who got out of an abusive relationship, it's time for you to focus on you and your healing. And counseling is very much recommended. Look, go to counseling. There's nothing wrong with counseling. There's nothing wrong with going to go see a therapist. I'm telling you, it will help your life. And, shopping for a therapist, you may not find the right person at, the first time. You have to shop around. Someone had used the analogy, shopping for a therapist is like shopping for shoes. You go, you look, you try on the shoe, you look in the mirror, like, I don't like how that fit. So it's like shopping. You have to shop around for your best fit. So in your process of looking for a counselor or a therapist, don't give up because the first person you sit down with isn't the right fit for you. Just put that person back on the shelf and go to someone else and try them out, and use the same concept and the same process of elimination to see what fits you. But I would say it's not healthy to hop out of abusive relationship and then go back on the scene looking for another relationship, and you have yet to heal and deal with the aftermath of that relationship. Because at that point, if you enter another relationship, you're going to carry that baggage right on in that relationship and end up sabotaging. If you got something good, you're going to sabotage it. And then, you may end up, I've seen people end up the abuser in the relationship because, that's all they know. So now they're starting fights and becoming the abuser when they were just being abused. So I say take that time and deal with you, and the healed you will attract who you need to be with.
What advice do you have for like children who witness domestic violence?
Oh, the babies. I don't know. That's a good question. Like, what can you tell a child, because their mind is so fragile, you know.
Well, let's say not like a very young child, but like a child that's like late middle school, high school,
Okay.
who's going to start dating, and like they witness their parents like being abusive or their parents being in an abusive relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I would tell them to know to pay attention to how things make them feel. Because that's not taught to our children enough. And I'm very intentional about teaching my children to pay attention to how people make you feel, how situations make you feel. And if it does not make you feel good, it's not for you. If it doesn't, if it makes your spirit feel a certain way, then it's not for you. And as women, we don't listen to that enough. I knew in that relationship from the beginning that I shouldn't have been there. I didn't listen to that feeling that I had, and I stayed. So I would say don't be afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't feel right to you. And to know that your intuition and what you feel is your superpower. And it's a I call it divine guidance. It's that thing within you that's guiding you and that's telling you what's for you and what's not for you. And no matter what environment you grew up in or what your mom and your dad relationship or your guardian relationship was, still pay attention to what feels right to you.
And then my last question. What would you say to current abusers that might just come across this channel is hear someone who has experienced it? Like, what would you say to them? Or what would like them to know about the actions they dare create for someone else?
I would say that you need to figure out what in you is fueling your behavior, because there's always a root cause to everything. So figuring out what in you is fueling and triggering your behavior to treat others less than, and it could be ego, it could be trauma, it could be some unlearning that you have to do. And I believe deep down inside, we all know what we need to do to become our best selves. It's just if we have the endurance to see through the process of getting to that person that we need to be. And in the process is where a lot of people give up because it's not easy. It's easier to abuse, and it's easier to just spaz out, and it's easier to talk down on someone else, especially if you're operating from an egotistical space, or you may have mommy issues, and it's easier you're nurturing that empty space where your mom should have been by degrading women or speaking down to women, or, or, however or whatever it is that you do. So I would say deal with those spaces within you that's triggering the behavior.
That was beautifully said, and this is definitely an important topic. In that, that people, especially in the Aphro Kingdom, who may have experienced this, witnesses, or possibly in the future, even though we do it not like it to happen, things happen, or you come across this channel and hear you speak and like tell your truth. Do you have any questions for me in particular as we wrap up this conversation?
No, I don't have any direct questions, but I do want to, encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep being consistent. This is a great thing that you're doing. This is a great platform that you are creating for people, and speak more about your truth. Because you do have a story that will help so many young adults that feel like they can't talk about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So how would the Aphro Kingdom be able to reach out to you and connect with you and even make appointments with you?
You can visit my website at don'tblockyourbloom.com. You can visit Instagram at don'tblockyourbloom.com and Twitter, Facebook. Everything's Don't Block Your Bloom. So you can Google it and I will come up. Don't Block Your Bloom.
Thank you, Aphro Kingdom. One great conversation we had today, and I hope you guys were impacted by it. Please reach out to her by going to the description box and make your appointment and follow her journey, because I know great things are going to be taking place in the near future, especially when COVID is about to clear up and we're about to go back to a similar normal life again.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being a part of the conversation.
Yes.